manual and automation QA. So these are the things that we have discussed yesterday. Now in today's session, we initially thought of starting with Java, but we'll be covering manual testing this week, and then starting next week we'll start with Java. So in today's session, right, we will be covering these topics. This is the agenda of today's session. So we'll be discussing about software testing lifecycle. Yesterday we have discussed about what software development lifecycle and software testing lifecycle is. We will go in depth on these two things today, and then we'll see what are business requirements, how are they given to you, how do you understand a business requirement. We'll see that, and then we'll start writing our first test case today. How do we develop or design your test cases? We'll look at that, and we have few test design techniques. How do you understand what is the data that has to be used for your given test cases and all. So and why do we need these test design techniques? We will look into that, and we'll discuss all these things using a case study. So they will use an user registration form as an example, and then we'll understand all these things, how all these things can be implemented in your real-time project. Okay, let's start with the software development lifecycle and software testing lifecycle first. So you're able to see my screen, right? I don't think you have any issues. Okay, not. Okay, you're able to see my screen, right? So sorry, I forgot to share my screen before. So these are the things that I discussed. So we'll start with software testing lifecycle. What is software development lifecycle and software testing lifecycle? We'll discuss in depth about this topic today. We will understand. Yesterday we discussed about a requirement. What is a functional requirement? What is a non-functional requirement? So we will discuss about these requirements in depth, and then you will start designing our test cases for these requirements. So how do you test some requirements and all? We'll do that. We'll discuss about test design techniques, and finally we will have a real-time example of an user registration form, and then we'll start implementing all these things that we have learned for testing this user registration form. Let's start with the software development lifecycle and the software testing lifecycle first. We have already discussed yesterday, right? Software development lifecycle. First, what everybody do is, so you'll have a product owner in your team, and then you will have an dev team and then a QA team. So typically, this is what an software team contains. Now, what product owner does is he will interact with the customers. He'll interact with uh, other products, what they are doing and all, and then he will understand what else can be done to your product. So what are the other enhancements, or the new things that can be brought to your product? He will list down all these new things, and then he will make a priority list. So what will be the first important thing among this list is what he will come up with. That's called requirement gathering. So he will gather all the important requirements, and then he will put it in a priority order. Now after gathering the requirements, right? He will let the dev team and the QA team know about these requirements. He will be discussing about, okay, these are the requirements that we have, and you have to plan. Dev team will plan how to develop this, how to add these requirements to the application, and QA team will plan how do we test it. So that's what will be done in analysis phase. We will all understand what exactly this requirement is, how is it, where is it being implemented, and how it can be tested. And then in the design phase, right, what we do is developers will typically start writing code. So for the given requirement, they will write the required code, and then uh, they will push to a source control like Git or something. Now from there, right, the testing team will take that code, add it to an environment, and then test the changes that the development team has done. So whatever requirements are there, they will make sure that all the requirements are satisfied and everything is working fine. That's what testing team does. And once testing team provides sign off, right, it will be given to customers for using. That's called the deployment phase, where we move the latest changes that we have done to the customer environment. This is a typical software development lifecycle. Now coming to software testing lifecycle. Once the requirements are gathered and they are discussed with the QA team, right? The software testing lifecycle begins there. So we do analyze the requirements. We understand what are the requirements are, and then we do test planning. What is test planning? Test planning is a phase where we plan everything, starting from when to test this, who will be testing it, what are the requirements that we need to have for testing it, like a different computer maybe. So if your application is supporting both desktop applications and mobile applications, you should be testing in mobile application as well, right? So they will list down what are the different devices that you need, a laptop, a mobile. They will list down it, how much time that is required for testing it. What will be the entry criteria? Entry criteria means if when should we start testing? That is defined in entry criteria. So let's say if the development of this particular requirement should be completed at least 90%. That can be one entry criteria. Uh, they should basic test should be passing. That can be one entry criteria. So it depends on requirement to requirement. So we will understand the entry criteria, and also we will understand the exit criteria. What is exit criteria means? When to stop testing. I mean, we can't test everything. That's the basic principle of software testing. That we can't test each and every combination and each and every permutation. So we need to understand when to stop the testing. And also we will see for this requirement to be pushed to customers, right? What are the things that we have to take care of? Meaning, if all the critical and priority bugs are fixed, then we can ship it to customers. Let's say if there are few things that are not yet fixed, let's consider a bug. Let's consider this example where we are looking at this user registration form. Let's say after entering all the details, clicking on submit button, if everything is working fine, then we can typically send it to the customers. But if there is an error condition where even if you are adding company name, or let's consider this, if there is a spelling mistake in registration information, that doesn't allow or that doesn't stop customers from submitting the registration form. You can still enter all the details and click on submit my registration. That's the thing that we discuss about discuss in exit criteria, when to stop testing, and if all the critical functionalities are already passing, then we can move our product to the customers. Even though if there are minor bugs, we can still move it to customers, and then we will fix these minor bugs in the upcoming weeks or upcoming releases. That is all discussed in the test planning. So we will have an detailed session about test planning, what is a test planning document and all, in the next session. But for now, understand that test planning is the phase where we discuss about what to test, when to stop testing, and who will be testing it, what are the devices required for testing it. These are the major things that will be discussed in test planning. Test design is a phase where you write test cases for the given requirements. You start writing test cases. You understand what is the test data required. Let's consider this user registration form again. So for filling this form, you need some data, right? You need a first name, you need a last name, you need an email address, you need a phone number. So this is all data. So what is the test data that we need to consider? What are the test cases that we are writing? That is all done in test design phase. Environment setup. Once your developers start push their changes in some version control like it, you will pull them and then you'll create your test environment. So this is the environment where you actually run these test cases that you have written and then verify everything is working fine. Now, once the environment is set up, then you will start test execution. Test execution is the phase where you execute all your test cases, verify everything is working fine. If there are some issues, you will log bugs. What is a bug or a defect? If your expectation is A and whatever you got while you're testing is not A, that is a bug, which means let's say let's consider this form again. If your requirement says first name should not contain any special characters, should not accept any special characters. Special characters means star, apostrophe, at the rate and all. And if you are entering Sumant at the rate here and then clicking on submit, if this form still takes it as a valid data, then that is a bug because first name should not. We have a condition in the requirement saying first name should not accept any special characters. It should accept only alphabets. Now that is a bug. So we will list down all these bugs and then we will assign them to a developer. Developers will fix them and then they will move them to close status. That's what that will be done. And the next one is a test closure. In the test closure, we will create a document which says who has done this testing, how many test cases are executed, what are the bugs that are raised, and who raised these bugs. All these things will be listed down in the test closure document. And if there are any pending bugs that are not fixed now and that are moved to next release or next week, even that details will be listed in the test closure document. And then this procedure continues. This is the major things that will be done. So do you have any questions here? We will see these step by step in detail while doing our case study. So here we have discussed about what each thing does. You'll get this document anyway. Now let's discuss about our case study.